Let me just allow you guys to show your videos.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you ready to make a difference? Join us for the 7th RHNK Adolescent and Youth Sexual and Reproductive Health and Rights Scientific Conference, taking place from June 18th to 21st, 2024. This year's conference is set to be bigger, bolder, and more informative than ever before. Over 1,000 delegates, over 100 international delegates, over 15 countries represented, over 100 civil society organizations, over 15 institutions of higher learning. Connect with leaders and experts in the SRHR space and be part of a transformative experience as we prioritize advancing the adolescents and youth sexual reproductive health in Africa. Join the conversation and register today by sending us an email to conference@rhnk.org. The 2024 RHNK Scientific Conference is organized in collaboration with the Ministry of Health, Division of Reproductive and Maternal Health, and co-convened by Center for Reproductive Rights and HEVOS Regional SRHR Fund. Engage in this exciting conversation and drive the change. For more details, please visit rhnk.org/conference. Karibuni Mombasa! This message is proudly presented to you by the Reproductive Health Network Kenya. Are you ready to make a difference? Join us for the 7th RHNK Adolescent and Youth Sexual and Reproductive Health and Rights Scientific Conference, taking place from June 18th to 21st, 2024. This year's conference is set to be bigger, bolder, and more informative than ever before. Over 1,000 delegates, over 100 international delegates, over 15 countries represented, over 100 civil society organizations, over 15 institutions of higher learning. Connect with leaders and experts in the SRHR space and be part of a transformative experience as we prioritize advancing the adolescents and youth sexual reproductive health in Africa. Join the conversation and register today by sending us an email to conference@rhnk.org. The 2024 RHNK Scientific Conference is organized in collaboration with the Ministry of Health, Division of Reproductive and Maternal Health, and co-convened by Center for Reproductive Rights and HEVOS Regional SRHR Fund. Engage in this exciting conversation and drive the change. For more details, please visit rhnk.org/conference. Karibuni Mombasa! This message is proudly presented to you by the Reproductive Health Network Kenya.
Beautiful morning, beautiful afternoon, beautiful evening, everybody, wherever you're joining us from. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. This is Innocent Indeje behind the voice behind the microphone is Innocent Indeje, the Youth Coordinator at Reproductive Health Network Kenya. And we are so happy to have all of you guys join us during this virtual conference. And we are glad. We are hitting numbers. I see we are doing well. We are hitting 105. Please, our amazing attendees, please just into in the message chat box, just check in and let us know where you're joining us from. We know we are having people from all over the continent, and people also here from outside the continent. So will just be glad to hear from you guys where you're joining us from. Allow me to welcome my co-moderator, Josephine, to introduce herself, and then we shall go on. Josephine, kindly take off the microphone.
Hi, everyone, boys and girls. Everybody else, welcome to this webinar. I'm so happy to see all of you. We're at 106. If you had shared the link with your friends, with your colleagues, and they're not here yet, hit them up, tell them to join, because this is where they need to be. They are really missing out. They need to be here. So do reach out to them, tell them to join so we can begin this amazing and beautiful conversation. We can get to hear and learn from each other. My name is Josephine Acheng Odhiambo. I work for Youth Changers Kenya as a program officer, and I'm also part of the Youth Advisory Panel, the Kenya representative under the under the HIVOS Regional SRHR Fund. Welcome everyone. Over to you, Innocent.
Thank you so much, Josephine. It's a pleasure to have you around, and I just know that this session is gonna be very amazing. We are going to be learning from so many people across the world, and we are going to be sharing with each other. So, guys, just a snippet of what we have today. We shall have presentations from our amazing speakers. We have Dr. Shakira Chonara, who will be sharing with us Dr. Shakira Chonara from the UN Women Headquarters, and she'll be sharing with us her sentiments when it comes to the issues around innovations around sexual reproductive health and rights. So we shall listen on this because, you know, today's young people, we are pro technology, we are pro ideas, we are pro innovations. So we would just like to know from Dr. Shakira, from her experience, having worked in many parts of the continent in Africa, and now that she's working with the UN, we would really love to just get a gist of what she sees is the position of innovations when it comes to sexual reproductive health. Because if we don't talk about health, I understand many issues affecting young people will not be well worked upon. And also, if we don't talk about health of the young people, many things not just affecting young people alone, but affecting most people in the community, including our adults, our parents, and everyone else, will not be effectively looked into. So after that, we shall listen to the amazing Ambassador Onward Gibson, all the way from Zimbabwe. And Onward will be bringing to us his experience. We understand he has a huge beehive of experience when it comes to issues around meaningful youth participation. So ladies and gentlemen, wherever you're joining us from, feel at home, feel comfortable, take your seat. If you have a glass of water, please keep sipping that glass, because when the time comes for you to shine, we will really want to hear from you guys. After Onward, we shall have to listen from Sir Elvis Seriki, the team lead Billy Nanao West Africa, and that is Benin, under Planned Parenthood Global. And Mr. Elvis Seriki will be sharing with us issues around leadership and governance. And we will just want to know, what is the space of young people when it comes to leadership and governance, especially leadership and governance on issues that are affecting the young people themselves. So I think it would be nice to just hear from the young people themselves, and also just hear from people who are experienced, and then just merge these ideas and see how are we going to be able to come up with an amazing way forward as we are heading towards the main conference. And the main conference, as we are telling you guys, is going to be happening in Kenya from this 18th to the 21st of June 2024. So we are just 1 month and about 2 days away. So if you've not registered, please, we'll be sharing the link for the registration in the chat box, in the chat box. Thank you. Lastly, we shall have to listen from our policy expert, one of the amazing policy experts across the country and across the region, Mr. Gaetano Ndalo, who will be sharing with us the status of adolescent and youth sexual reproductive health and rights policies and legal frameworks. We would like to take stock and see, do these policies really speak to what we as young people need? Do these policies really speak to exactly what we should be given? So we shall be taking stock of this. And after listening to these amazing, powerful sessions from these amazing presenters, we shall take a look at some of the issues affecting young people. So in the beginning, we shared with you just a brief of the upcoming conference. So after that, we shall be sharing with you guys what young people had to say when it comes to the issues affecting them in their respective countries. You'll hear from young people from Zimbabwe, Ghana, Nigeria, Mozambique, across the country. So just stay tuned. You never know, you might see your friend or your brothers or your colleagues' video, your colleagues' sentiments, and it will be nice to just hear from what people have to say. And then after that, we shall have to break out into different breakaway rooms. And we have 5 breakaway rooms. One will be looking at the aspect of leadership and leadership and participation in youth leadership and participation in SRHR. 2, we shall have another breakout room looking at bridging the digital divide and harnessing technology for AYSRHR. 3, we shall be looking at youth-centered approaches to sexual reproductive health services. 4, we shall be looking at reimagining social accountability. Social accountability, I think this is one of the most important things. So I know we have people here who are just pro-accountability, pro-social accountability, and we would really love to learn from you. And the last but not least, the last breakaway session that was brought by young people again themselves is the aspect of climate change. So we would like to hear, what do we have to say? What do we have to do when it comes to climate change and SRHR? And after that, we will be sharing a link to the link to a mural board where we want you guys to just throw your signatures, throw your words. Tell us exactly how you feel about SRHR, what you want to see being done, and who is this person you want to see on the forefront. So, ladies and gentlemen, just in a nutshell, that is what we shall be covering throughout this engagement. I would like to take back the microphone back to Josephine, just to as she'll be ushering in our amazing speakers to share with us their sentiments. Thank you so much. Back to you, Josephine.
Thank you so much, Innocent, for that amazing introduction and letting the people know what they should expect and what's up with regards to today's webinar. I can see the comment section is very active. The chat box is very active, which is good. The chat box is your space. Feel free to use it. If you have any questions for the different panelists, feel free to drop them there. Innocent and I will be able to ask those questions when an opportunity presents itself. So without any further ado, I'd want to invite our first speaker. And for those who've just joined in and were not there when Innocent was giving a brief, so Dr. Shakira is going to talk about innovations in sexual reproductive health and rights. So what does innovation look like? What are the current innovations that either are on the pathway or are currently happening? So I can see she's here. Welcome very much, Dr. Shakira. Feel free to introduce yourself so that the young people and everybody within the webinar can be able to understand who you are. And also in your introduction, please let us know, what do you do for fun? Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Shakira.
Josephine and Innocent, it's amazing to be here, and I'm really happy to be here because this year I won't be able to be at the conference in person. So I'm still really happy to be checking in. I'll start off with the fun thing about myself. I do lots of fun things. I travel quite a bit. I love skydiving actually, and I'm also an actress in my spare time. Now we can get to the serious stuff. So I've really worked in the field of public health for quite a while in different organizations and civil society. And I previously worked in the World Health Organization and now UN Women. At UN Women, I coordinate what we know as the Generation Equality Action Coalition on bodily autonomy and SRHR, and it brings together 300 plus partners from across the world, including youth commitment makers, about 76 organizations who work on SRHR. The Reproductive Health Network of Kenya is also a commitment maker to the Action Coalition, and so we work closely on that front as well. I'm going to jump right into the discussion for today, and I think it's actually the youth who are attending the Caravan who will go into different breakaways, and that's where we'll see the innovation happen. As I jumped onto this call, I even thought to myself, actually, the Youth Caravan, both in person and virtual, is an innovation all by itself. When I think about innovation, I say innovation equals changing the world. That's the way I really see it. And I think there's different ways in which it's already happening, and young people, in my experience, know their communities best, they know their peers the best, and they're able to actually guide programming, and they're able to guide programming in an innovative way. And yes, we do talk about technology, but I also think that there's also innovation around startup enterprises, there's innovation around products, there's innovation around tying what we're doing between SRHR and climate change. So overall, there's holistic innovation that young people are leading. I think for me, the most exciting is that young people tend to bring change in their communities and innovation with very little resources. and so they can teach the world a lot. What would I like to see more of? I think we see a lot of innovation sometimes coming from the developed world, and that's because there's so much of investments in research, in evidence, in building young capacity. And I wish we could do more of this on the African continent. RHNK, for example, starts to get youth and other stakeholders to think about evidence, etc. But I think that there's more investments need to be made in the sciences, in making sure that youth are supported to come up with ideas, and also do this, from the time they start their undergraduate studies until they possibly work or set up their enterprises. I'll end off by really saying that I don't think it's just about innovation. Again, I said innovation changes the world, but I think innovation should also be and is also about activism. And in what we're doing, we're trying to solve society's problems. We're trying to solve SRHR problems. And so sometimes I see that, we follow the path of already what's out there, but how do we start to think of different things? And where there's innovation, for example, which is not necessarily led by young people, but we see self-managed abortion care, for example. We see lots of self-care. And so those are the sorts of innovations I think we need to invest in. And if they're youth-led, I think that's even better. So that's all I have to say for this morning. Again, I'm really, really excited to be here and looking forward to seeing what comes out of the discussions, especially the different breakaways. So thanks both.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Shakira. I think every day we engage, I get to sit in your engagement. It's like just a new day to learn a new thing and a new more thing. And it's just so I just want to say this is a blessing we have. Thank you so much for the sentiments you shared. And I just love the fact that today our presenters are not going to be sharing PowerPoint presentations. It's just amazing that we have this way of sharing ideas, because I believe when it comes right from your mind, it comes right from your heart. It's exactly what you feel, it's exactly what you've experienced, and it's exactly what we want to see happen in the field, and not maybe what somebody else said and you're trying to remember. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Shakira. I don't know if there's anything my co-moderator will want to say, because for me, I think I would just want to stop and say, when you say it's not just about innovations themselves, it's about supporting these young people to understand how differently they can be able to leverage their innovations. Thank you so much, Dr. Shakira. Back to you, Josephine.
Oh, thank you. And it was great to hear from you, Dr. Shakira. I love the aspect of self-care as an innovation, and just seeing how best can we integrate self-care as an initiative, as an innovation, to ensure that a lot of young people who do not have access to sexual reproductive health services can be able to access that. So my question, just a follow-up question based on the issue of self-care. From your experience and from what you know, if you were to integrate self-care when it comes to sexual reproductive health and rights, how would that look like?
I think there's different arms to it, and thanks, Josephine. The one is at the policy and the legislative level, right? So at what age can young people legally make decisions about what they want to access? So for example, if I walk into a pharmacy, am I able to access certain products or interventions, or even a healthcare facility, etc.? And so I think that level needs to first be sorted out. The second one is, and, this is not rocket science, and we're still finding it, because I also work on the Lancet Commission on Adolescent Health and Wellbeing, which is looking at what's the latest research on adolescent health. And schools still show to be the main form of reaching young people. We would think online, but schools as well. And so finding ways into school programming is important. And then, yes, social media. I also think that, and again, I'm not saying anything new, I do think that parents also play a role in this. And so there's a whole chain of things which need to happen to integrate self-care. The other thing which also needs to be which needs to happen is the healthcare system has to move with the times, and it also has to be responsive to this. It can't be in conflict with self-care. So there's quite a few things. And then finally, I'd end off saying, because I think it is important, yes, self-care is, but we do have to have those support mechanisms of what you do if something goes wrong. And we learned that from the HIV field. And so if that's not, attention is not paid to that, then of course it could lead to things like further stigma, not seeking healthcare, leading to depression, leading to suicide. And I'm mentioning that because I think that's really real. And so while we amplify self-care and it is innovative and it's important to also raise those issues.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Dr. Shakira, for your thoughts in regards to how the process of integration of self-care should look like. I feel like it's a discussion that's happening within different spaces, but I love the aspect of you sharing it's important to get it right from the policy level, because that's where the problem usually starts. And then we see how best now do young people come in once the policy issues have been sorted out. So thank you so much, Dr. Shakira. Innocent, do you have any questions in the chat for Dr. Shakira before we move on to the next panelist?
Just looking at the chat box at the questions. Currently I can't see any question, but let me keep going through, and then if I get any question, I'll just share it right away.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. Thank you so much, Dr.
Just a
Shakira,
minute,
for
just
that
a minute.
wonderful presentation.
Yeah,
okay.
I can see Signat says, my question is that if we need to be 18 for legal rights, why consent run down to 12 years? Oh, this is amazing. I don't know which country he comes this participant comes from. I would have loved to hear where the participant comes from. Yeah, so the question was, if I need to be 18, yes, my question is, if we need to be 18 for legal rights, then why consent run down to 12 years? So we're having countries where consent is up to 12 years. We understand we have countries where consent is up to, and Signat is from South Africa. Thank you so much from joining in from South Africa. So I see it's like in South Africa, consent goes all the way up to 12 years. I see other countries, there are 16, like in Kenya, we are doing 18 years. Although even some of the legal frameworks, they will tell you 21 years. So I think this is a good question. Maybe Dr. Shakira can dive and just let us know.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Innocent. And sorry, I keep going off camera because I mentioned I have to run for another engagement. I'm so sorry, but I'm happy to quickly answer the question if I understand it correctly. And I would say, and unapologetically say that, South Africa is very progressive when it comes to SRHR. And so it's great to see the country having young people as sort of young as 12 to think about the healthcare services and access the healthcare services. There's a few other countries on the continent, especially in Southern Africa, which also are along these lines. So if I were to answer this question, I would also say that, I think Signature is spot on. We need to also question the overall age of human rights, and that being 18. So we see in many parts of Europe, for example, young people are able to vote from the age of 16. And does that make a difference? So I think it's really progressive that lowering the age, but doing so in a way that's safe and ethical, which supports young people to make their decisions, is great. And it leads for me to a bigger question of, why not reduce so many other rights or age limits even lower? Because I think that's actually fantastic. I'm personally a proponent of this.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shakira, for your response to that question. And you mentioned you're about to leave, so feel free to leave in case more questions come up. We'll most definitely forward them to you, and then you can be able to respond, and then we'll see how to coordinate with the HNK so that the different people get their questions answered. So thank you very much for being here and for your presentation. We move on to the next panelist who will be taking us through meaningful youth participation. I'm very curious to hear that, and maybe can the speaker also touch on there's a term that has been used within the civil society space. If is there a difference between meaningful youth participation, meaningful youth engagement, ethical engagement of young people, all these big terms that we usually hear within this space? I'm hoping that Gibson, you can be able to take us through that and make our listeners understand what exactly does meaningful youth participation mean, and what exactly do they need to look at when somebody is saying, but you are meaningfully engaged. Over to you, Gibson.
Hi guys, thank you so much for this opportunity, and thank you to all the speakers who spoke before me, acknowledging maybe one previous speaker, Dr. Shakira. Thank you so much. I think when we talk, I think meaningful youth engagement, it's a very topical issue currently, especially as we see them leaving no one behind when we talk about SDGs. And when we look at meaningful youth participation, or I would love to use meaningful youth engagement, because we see that mostly young people have almost been on every menu, but they are not at the table. And when we look at the regional perspective, there are a lot of developmental spaces that are there. And you see that it has been a difficult process when we talk about many, especially mainstreaming, and when we talk about institutionalizing meaningful youth engagement approaches. So some, of the challenges is include ensuring that young people are able to be decision makers. They are able to hold the power, they are able to be influential in terms of policies and programs that directly affect their lives. When we look at what I would call a multi-pronged approach, we have seen, though, in the past years, where there are, advisory bodies, where there are boards, where there are councils, that where they are calling for youth to be part of it. But most of the time, there are no clear mechanisms for youth representation and clear mechanism to really support their full participation. And we also, when we look at Africa, we can't then forget that we are also part of societies that have deep-rooted patriarchy, where then men have the power. But when we even look at men, we also see where the older men actually have the power, where then a young person cannot speak after an older person and is termed respect. So there's need to, if we want to make sure that we foster meaningful youth engagement, one of the things is that we need to continue providing capacity strengthening and leadership development opportunities for young people, for advocates, so that they are able to effectively engage and advocate for their interests, but also advocate even when we look at, being able to push themselves meaningfully into decision-making spaces. We also need to make sure that we continue engaging our organizations, our institutions, our governments, to make sure that they, foster organizational cultures and leadership mindsets that genuinely value the perspectives and that also appreciate even the experiences and also the qualifications and the capacities of youth to make sure that they give them the power they are able also to appreciate their influence. But we also need to make sure that wherever in spaces where there is young people and where we are called to speak, where we are called to sit on the table, where we are called to boards, we need to make sure that we have monitoring and evaluation and accountability frameworks that also makes sure that we measure the effectiveness of the seats or the platforms that we are given to actually measure and say how effective are we participating, which is also then able to inform the capacity building and the technical support that young people can also can also need in those spaces. But we need to continue to create inclusive spaces like these where diverse youth voices are heard and where they are respected, and where when that is respected, and also we also need to really look at at these spaces that we are in. Are they not formed on the basis of tokenism? Are we also not, further marginalizing youth? Because there's also marginalization where it looks like you are involved, you are there, but you are marginalized as well in favor of, adult-centric priorities. So I can just, in conclusion, say, we also need to make sure that we have conversations with our governments, with donors, with CSOs, with private sector, in terms of providing meaningful opportunities for youth to lead and drive the agenda when it concerns them. We need to also invest in youth-led organizations and grassroots movement in terms of even creating funding mechanisms that are friendly to youth-led organizations, because to young people, because young people are the best foot for them to engage other young people, their peers, on their issues. They understand each other, and it's also very it's also actually very cheaper and very sustainable to work with young people who are in their communities. But we see all these funding mechanisms where a lot is needed and a lot of experience is needed. A youth officer, and they need a youth officer who have 10 years experience, and that experience is judged by when they graduated or when they start working. If I look at you, Josephine, you're a very young person. And you started working in these spaces as a very young person, and your experience spans way before your academic qualification. I started engaging in community work at the age of 12 years, when I was part of a community theater group, and then I grew with it, volunteering in different organizations, even until I started college at 25. And that should be experience that should be able to count even when I'm able to get into a space. So in a nutshell, the core is to make sure that we take young people serious. The core is to make sure that we value their input. The core is to make sure that we establish mentorship programs. The core is to make sure that we also highlight and amplify stories of success and achievements by many youth activists, youth leaders, and also many youth-led organizations that are doing greater work. But lastly, we also need to make sure that we foster cross-generational collaborations and intergenerational dialogues to bridge the gap between youth and adult stakeholders, but with the appreciation that young people also have the expertise, have the knowledge, and have the experience. And sometimes it is also adults that need the capacity to engage with youth. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was a good. I love how you've ended the note that sometimes it's the adults that need the capacity. I love to hear that. So I love that you also spoke about the aspect of the effectiveness when it comes to meaningful youth engagement. And my question then to you would be, when it comes to measuring effectiveness of meaningful youth engagement initiatives or meaningful youth engagement processes, how would measuring it look like? What metrics would we use to measure and say that this actually meaningful youth engagement took place here? Because we've had incidences where young people are invited into spaces and the conveners say, but they were there. That's meaningful youth engagement. So there's a struggle in terms of how exactly do we measure meaningful youth engagement. So from your end and based on your experience and your expertise, what metric would you suggest that we use, either that has worked or it's an idea that either you have or other people have, other young people have, when it comes to measuring meaningful youth engagement that we as young people and the different spaces that we.
Thank you so much. That's a very important and strategic question. I think when we look at meaningful youth engagement, number one, the first aspect is representation and inclusion. So the first thing that we look at when we talk about representation and inclusion is the diversity of representation. When we look at simple things like age, gender, socioeconomic status, ability, and when we also look at broader intersectional identities, depending on the space, we can have a young person, but the issue is that do they represent the right constituency or the right community? So it's the very important first aspect. The second aspect is the influence and impact. So our measure is when we can look at the extent to which the inputs, the recommendations of young people reflect in the final products. Is it a program? What measure of youth inputs or recommendation did, make up that program or, end up reflecting in our policies and the decisions? And in that, we are also looking at the level of youth decision-making power and autonomy in terms of shaping that agenda and direction of the initiative. Is it coming from the youth constituents that they are carrying in their back? Is it coming from their mind, or it is, someone older's mind that they are speaking to? So that will overall then speak into, the demonstrated change in outcomes and in the impact of, the products that we can say we can attribute this to youth engagement. And lastly, we can also look at, sustainability in terms of inclusion. Are there young people that are coming to sit in our programs when the important decision-making structure is probably the board? So where are young people in the board that decide the policies of the institution before we look at the decisions in the programming? So we need to make sure that we see the existence of dedicated youth engagement seats, but also the policies, the strategies to include youth, and the resources allocation within the institutions and the organizations. So that will also speak to issues to do with sustainabilities. So mainly I can say I'm not quite an M&E person, but that's what I can say. And whether both quantitative or qualitative indicators that focus much both on either short-term or, long-term outcomes, where we can be able to track, and organizations or policymakers also can be able to assess through that the extent which, youth are genuinely engaged or involved and are able to shape the decisions that affect their lives.
Okay, thank you so much, Onward, for that beautiful presentation. I love the aspect of using about the different components that need to be looked at. So for the different young people that are here, within the different programs or initiative or the different spaces that you're in, you can use some of the information that Onward has given in terms of representation, inclusion. Do you even have power to make decisions within that space? To measure when somebody says they're meaningfully engaging you, you can use some of the information that Onward has shared to gauge. And if in case it doesn't meet any of those things, then unfortunately you are not meaningfully engaged. Then you can have a reference point to tell them, with this process, they are not meaningfully engaged. Thank you so much, Onward, for that beautiful presentation. Innocent, do you have any questions from the chat box?
Oh, yeah. From the chat box, what I've just seen is there's a somebody who's complained about the current status of policies in Kenya, and I think this is what Gaetano would want to look at very much. It's actually looking at the policies, so maybe we'll want to come back to it later, but it's speaking about how some of the policies and, for example, the constitution is giving consent at 18 years, but we look at other other policies and legal frameworks that are saying maybe access to certain services, especially sexual reproductive health services. A healthcare provider can give you these services. Others at the same time, you see, they say you go with your parent or a guardian. So it's a question, should we go by the policy of the constitution, which is a good question. And I think this one will be covered very well by Gaetano. And just looking at the comment section, I'm just seeing most of the people are sharing on how where they're joining us from. And just to highlight a few of them, we have Consolata who's joining us from Kilifi. I see Mukunzi who is joining us from Kakuma, Turkana. Thank you so much, Mukunzi. I saw somebody from South Africa. I've seen Agnes is joining us here again also. Thank you so much, everyone. And then I see Haimba says, powerful message following. Thank you so much. Signat is down from South Africa. Signat, don't worry. We shall have the session where each and every person will have to go into the breakaway rooms, and that is where we shall be allowed to speak. For now, let us just give the speakers, the panelists, the room to share their sentiments. Then we shall have to engage them as we go ahead. Thank you so much. I see Haimba saying, Ambassador Onward, nailing it. Thank you so much for that. Fortune Maragwanda from Zimbabwe. Thank you for joining in, Fortune. That's great. John Murage from Nakuru, Kenya. I see powerful Lauren from Kakamega, Kenya. Nice. I see Sebo. Hey, this is a difficult name. Sebongile from Lesotho. This is great. Thank you so much. We love the engagement. Thank you, everyone. We would love to hear from you guys. So Onward, that was amazing. Just to go back to what you said, and I don't want to say everything you said, but you said, young people, if we don't take care, we shall never find ourselves at the decision-making table. We shall find ourselves on the menu. So this is very critical that we ensure we become part of the decision makers and not part of the menu. Back to you, Jocelyn.
Thank you so much, Innocent. And if there's no seat at the table, bring yours. There's somebody that said, I don't know who the person is. If you know who the person is, feel free to put in the chat box.
Indeed.
On to our next presentation, which will be done by Elvis, which is on leadership and governance. So over to you, Elvis. If you could strictly make it to 5 minutes, that would be great. So over to you, Elvis. Elvis, if you're speaking, you're muted.
Elvis, kindly, maybe if you could unmute, that would be nice. We've seen you speaking, but you are on mute still.
Unmute.
I think just check on the bottom left of your screen. Yeah, there's a microphone there. Click the microphone. I don't know why he's not able to.
Innocent, because you're the co-host, could you just help with unmuting him?
I've asked him to unmute. Yes, I've asked him to unmute, but he's unable. I don't know. Maybe it's the same problem I'm having with my video, because
Yeah.
I'm having it with my video. So I think there's a problem with Elvis, maybe with his microphone. So let's go to Gaetano, maybe, and then we shall come back to
Gaetano.
Elvis.
Yeah. As Elvis tries to sort out his internet issues, we'll invite Mr. Gaetano Mondalo, who will just take us through adolescent and sexual reproductive health policy and legal frameworks, which I think there was a question that was raised in terms of the disparities between the constitution, which is the law of the land, and the different policies that we have, and the different regional frameworks that Kenya is signatories to. And then also the difference of there's the policy, there's the law, and then there's the practice when it comes to issues of sexual reproductive health and rights, especially for adolescents and young people. So we'll give an opportunity to Mr. Gaetano to take us through his presentation. Over to you, Gaetano.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Josephine. I hope I'm audible enough. Please confirm.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Yeah.
you are.
Okay, thank you so much for this great opportunity to be able to share some bit of knowledge around policy and legal frameworks at the regional level that, basically just touch around the SRHR. And how it is that I'm going to approach this particular subject is that, first of all, it is important for us to understand what policies are, what legal frameworks are, and also what standards are. And then it will also be important for us to understand what are some of the regional policy frameworks that we have that actually touch on SRHR, which our countries, the ones that we are representing, some of them have ratified. And as we'll come to learn later is that in our constitutions, and for the case of Kenya, is that when you look at Article 2, the country, once it has ratified any international covenant or treaty, then it forms part of the, local laws of Kenya. So it means if Kenya ratifies, like the CEDAW Convention, then it means Kenya should go ahead and, put into practice the recommendation or the commitments in that particular covenant. And so also we'll also have a chance to understand also at the sub-regional level, because you have the regional and then we also have the sub-regional. So there are those frameworks that actually inform how it is that countries get to implement and work around issues to do with SRHR. And as it had been introduced earlier on, I work at the Center for Reproductive Rights, where basically we use the power of the law to advance reproductive rights as fundamental human rights around the world. And our work basically just, centers around now building policies and laws that, seek to promote and advance SRHR. And for this particular instance, I'm going to focus my discussion on sexual and reproductive health and rights. So probably one might want to ask themselves what legal frameworks, So by layman's language, legal frameworks are basically just a set of laws. It could also be regulations or even legal structures that govern a specific domain. So for example, for the case of our countries, we look at probably the countries that we're coming from. For the case of where I'm present right now, it's Kenya. And they are usually, these structures are usually enforceable and actually carry legal consequences if violated. So for example, if something is a law and then one does not implement it, then it, brings about punishment. And from the countries that, again, we represent, we have something called the Penal Code. So the Penal Code actually is a legal framework that specifies which acts are lawful and which acts are unlawful. And, in the event you go against such an act, then there are this set of consequences that are bound to come about. So legal frameworks, again, also establish the rights, remember, the responsibilities and obligations of individuals, including even organizations and even governments within a legal system. So what should one do and in what particular circumstances? But for this particular reason, we are going also to look at, I will concentrate on sexual and reproductive health and rights. And then also one will want to understand what do we mean when we talk about policies. And so when you want to understand policies, these are basically just, statements, high-level statements or principles that guide, decision-making and actions within a government or an organization. So they are basically, principles that are supposed to help individuals make decisions that are going to be very strategic and decisions that are going to, derive a certain outcome. Possibly, these are outcomes that are positive and geared towards, advancing the health and well-being of individuals. And when you look at policies, they have defined goals. So a policy is supposed to have a defined goal. What does it strive to achieve? And then when you look at a policy, also it needs to have specific objectives that at the end of the day, if it is implemented, then they'll be able to come back and say these objectives were met. And then when you look also at a policy, it needs to have strategies that are geared towards, achieving those desired outcomes that I've, previously talked about. And policies at a whole, provide also a framework for making consistent and informed choices, often based on also what the society in that particular country thinks and values and also prioritizes. And that's why you'll come to understand when you're talking about issues about around adolescent sexual and reproductive health policies, especially in this part of Africa where we're coming from, there have been arguments around whatever this policy proposes is against our culture, is against our values. So that's how now you get to find also politics around policy making coming in, and that's what also informs some of the issues that we are having, especially advocacy in the SRHR space, when it comes to opposition. And when we are looking at also healthcare, you'll find policies can address issues around patients' privacy. It can also, address issues around access to care. It can also, address issues around quality improvement initiatives. In Kenya, we've had the adolescent sexual reproductive health and rights policy, which actually expired. And at the moment, we have a revised draft of the same policy, which, if you look at it again, it doesn't have some of the progressive elements that the previous policy actually had. And when you integrate that particular discussion, you come to find that some of the elements around opposition have influenced, the content of the current policy that we have. And then also, apart from policies and law frameworks, we have things that we call standards and guidelines. So basically, these are just technical now specifications or best practices that aim to ensure consistency as well as quality and offer guidance in a particular sector. So how are services supposed to be conducted and in which particular standard? For those who come from Kenya, you've had even the center engaging in a court battle around the reinstatement of the standards and guidelines on the prevention of maternal mortality and and morbidity from unsafe abortion in Kenya. So these are guidelines that actually provide guidance on how healthcare providers are supposed to address certain health issues whenever they come into their health facilities. But you find with the withdrawal of these standards and guidelines, then healthcare providers lack that proper, best practices in which they can also be able to address some of the health concerns of, adolescents, for this particular case, adolescents in Kenya. And so, having defined these policies, I want us now just also to start understanding what are some of these frameworks that we have. And we'll start from the sub-regional level. So I'll also talk about the East Africa as well as the southern part of Africa. So at the East Africa level, again, for the advocates in the House, there has been this constant discussions around the East Africa Community SRHR bill, which has also been marred, in a lot of controversy as well as politics. But when you look at the bill, it's anchored on Article 118 of the East Africa Community Treaty, which, when you look at this treaty, it seeks to speak to the commitment by partner states to cooperate in health, specifically in the advancement of reproductive health and rights. So this bill actually had very progressive provisions around sexual and reproductive health and rights. And it actually, one of the issues that the bill was trying to address was the issue of the age of consent when it comes to accessing appropriate sexual and reproductive health and services, including information, which actually, from what we know, is a contested issue, especially when you look at issues around our African values, as well as when you look at issues around our Africa traditional culture. And so the bill also seeks to prevent, newborn mortality, child mortality, and as well as maternal mortality. And when you start interrogating some of the causes of newborn mortality, they are traced also to complications that, come as a result of lack of access to information when it comes to sexual and reproductive health and rights, as well as, lack of services themselves. So they bring about these challenges that we advocate around, especially things to do with unintended teen pregnancies. And so when you look at this bill, it is yet to be passed, and we hope that when it is passed, then it will provide a framework for the East African states to see how now at the national level, they can also domesticate some of the elements from the bill that can go towards advancing the rights and welfare of adolescents and young people in the region. And when you now go down south, we also have the Southern Africa Development Cooperation Protocol on Gender and Development. So when you look at this protocol, it was actually adopted in 2008, and it builds upon other international and regional commitments that have already been ratified by states, including the Convention on the Elimination of all forms of discrimination against women. And the main objective of this protocol on gender and development is just to integrate the perspective of gender in all issues of social, political, and economic development in the region, because we understand health is a very big, significant determinant when it comes to development. Where you find a particular population is sick, then it means they're not be in a position to, engage effectively in some of the economic activities of the nation. And when you look even at the statistics of our countries, young people are the biggest population. So it means if the health of young people is not good, then the future of these countries is also, in jeopardy. And so that's why it is very, very important when you're looking at matters of health, even from the legal or policy perspective, the issue of intersectionality is very, very important for you to understand how does health impact on all facets of life. Because if you lose one side of it, then you'll also fail to understand holistically how important it is to address matters, sexual reproductive health and rights, especially for adolescents and young people. Further, still in the southern area, is that we also have the SADC SRHR strategy, which has a lifespan of around almost 10 years. So it was developed in 2019 and it goes all the way to 2030. And this SADC SRHR strategy also provides a framework for member states from the southern part of Africa to fast track a healthy sexual and reproductive life for the people in the region. So it provides a framework on which member states can actually make advancements in terms of addressing issues around sexual and reproductive health and rights of people. So it's important that also countries in the southern part of Africa are able to leverage on this strategy to understand also at the national level what are some of the elements that they need to integrate in their national planning, especially when it comes to policy implementation, that will be able to also feed into the realization and implementation of this particular strategy. And it also builds on other international frameworks that have already been domesticated by member states, especially in the region. Then at a whole, as Africa as a region, we have the famous I can say Bible, SRHR Bible, that most of our work also is anchored upon. And this is actually the Maputo Protocol. Some of you might have heard about it. It is actually the mother Bible when it comes to issues SRHR and also issues women empowerment and advancement. And it specifically addresses women's rights, including now unpacking SRHR as a whole. And when you look at Article 14, it actually unpacks what states need to consider when they are advancing women's rights, especially when it comes to sexual and reproductive health and rights. It talks about access to family planning, issues around protection from harmful practices like female genital mutilation, as well as even issues around forced marriages, and issues around also, when you look at the other side of things around gender, issues around inheritance. And so it's a very authoritative document which has been ratified by most countries in Africa that also should be leveraged upon, especially by young people when they are addressing or when they are advocating for sexual and reproductive health and rights. And the reason as to why I'm saying it's a mother document and it has been ratified is because of the element around constitutions where we are obligated to domesticate all these provisions that we've ratified, be it at the global or even at the regional level. And so you'll be able to understand from the Maputo Protocol, it has issues around the right of women to control their fertility. So that's where you bring arguments around family planning. And so it also helps us to start having discussions around why should women and girls access, family planning, because it is their right. It's their right to health. But now you find when you start having that discussion, then issues of age of consent then starts creeping in, and all other issues around, culture. It also talks about, different methods of contraception that adolescents and young people can also be at liberty to, to choose and access, especially even when it comes to the information part. Then we also have the Abuja Declaration, which actually, again, talks about access to health services, as well as, ensuring that CSE is integrated in as a component of SRHR when it comes to adolescents and young people. Then, colleagues, as I try to wrap up my presentation so that I also allow room for questions and probably clarification, is that we also have the Africa Union Roadmap on the Continental Policy Framework for Sexual and Reproductive Health and Rights. And the reason as to why I'm talking about all these documents is because most of the time we advocate for rights at the national level, but we don't know how to rationalize our arguments, or we don't know from which frameworks do we base our arguments when we're advocating for these particular rights. And so these documents that I'm sharing, they've been ratified and endorsed by most of our countries, and so they are supposed to form part of our local law. So that's why I'm emphasizing on us as young people to endeavor to understand what these policies and legal frameworks actually talk about. And so when you look at the roadmap on the Continental Policy Framework, it also provides guidelines for promoting comprehensive sexuality education, a very, contested issue again. And when you look at Kenya, some recent months ago, it silently withdrew from the ESA commitment, the Eastern and Southern Africa Ministerial Commitment on Education, that highlights the importance of comprehensive sexuality education. And so this framework, actually, you can see the interconnectedness between these other frameworks and how they're supposed to further advance our sexual and reproductive health and rights. Then last but not least, we also have the Africa Youth Charter, also, which has a component on health. When you look at Article 14, it basically highlights the importance of education and skills development, and there it highlights the integration, or rather, emphasizes the importance of states integrating comprehensive sexuality education in their informal and formal education systems. So these standards are there, these policy guidelines are there. It's just that at times at the national level, when you are advancing or we are advocating for our rights, most of the decision makers tend to think that we haven't ratified these laws, and they are not supposed to form part of our local laws as well. So as young people moving forward, we should understand that we have a basis from which to anchor our advocacy strategies. And these documents are authoritative, and some of the way of holding our states accountable, and also utilizing some of the recommendations of these documents is by engaging at the regional level with treaty monitoring bodies, because at times we feel like our efforts at the national level are not very, very fruitful, but we have been given an opportunity to advance our advocacy and our accountability efforts at the regional level. And for this particular point, I'll talk about two accountability mechanisms that we have as we wrap up this discussion. We have the African Committee on the Rights, African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, who actually monitors the implementation of the Africa Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child. So, like the Maputo Protocol, which highlights women's rights, the African Charter now emphasizes or talks about the rights of children. Now, for this one, they're looking at children up to the age of 19, and that's where now you also see the age cohort of adolescents actually fall under. And when you look at the chart, it's very, very progressive. When you look at Article 14, it also talks about health services, health and health services, where, you know, state parties are required to ensure that no child is deprived of his or her right to access all health services. And the beauty about engaging these accountability mechanisms is that they are very progressive in terms of how they listen to issues or how they listen to matters. A very good example I'll share as I wrap up this presentation is that recently, as part of our work at the center, you've probably come around this news article. In Tanzania, there was an issue around the reintegration and retention of pregnant learners in school. So the issues about school reentry. And the former president, may his soul rest in peace, one time just woke up and said, moving forward, no pregnant adolescents will be allowed in school. And those who are pregnant, they are supposed to be expelled. And among other issues were also things to do with forced pregnancy testing, and also boys who were found to have impregnated these girls at some point were also arrested. So it was a very retrogressive kind of policy from the executive. And remember, he just spoke about it in a public arena, and then it became policy. Like, you know, all government departments started implementing it. You know, when you look at the Department of Education. And so we had cases where girls were dropping out of school, adolescent boys were being, you know, arrested. And so when we try to pursue this matter using local mechanisms, we didn't go far, as you understand the politics in some of our countries. And so we decided to advance this matter to the Africa Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, and it was hard. So this was a collaborative work being led by the center. And some of the progressive decisions that came out, and I can share this document later, there are around 13 recommendations that were given to the government of Tanzania. One of them was for them to stop the forced pregnancy testing and expulsion of pregnant learners in school. The other recommendation that the committee gave to the government of Tanzania was that they need to put in place measures that will ensure adolescents who fall pregnant are able to go back to school and continue their education, as well as supportive structures to ensure that their smooth integration into the school system is actually ensured. And so when you look at that engagement, it is an advocacy win that now, as we speak, the government of Tanzania has started to put in place measures to ensure that they oblige to the recommendations of this particular committee. And so my advice to the youth advocates in the House is that even in our advocacy for adolescent sexual and reproductive health and rights, we shouldn't just focus at the national level with our advocacy efforts. We should understand that there's an opportunity at the regional level to advance our accountability and advocacy work. And from that level, actually, we can hold our states and governments accountable for advancing our rights, especially sexual and reproductive health and rights. I now have spoken for long. I want to stop there and just pass the mic back to the moderators. Thank you for paying attention to the lengthy presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gaetano, for that informative presentation on policies and legal frameworks in terms of what the young people need to know. I have actually just learned that if within your country doesn't work, there's actually a higher power that you can actually go to and get your issues heard in terms of different policies. It was very, very informative. Innocent, before I ask my questions, do you have any question within the chat for Gaetano?
Yeah, just to begin with, maybe if Gaetano could maybe respond to the question. I don't know if he responded in his explanation, but maybe if you could go back to the question. When offering FP services to youth and adolescents, the AY statutory policy in Kenya allows for giving methods without parental consent, but on the other hand, all clients should consent for services before offering them, and the Kenyan Constitution caps consenting age at 18. Should we go by the policy or the Constitution? That was the question.
Yeah. Okay. So
and just to add on that, Gaetano, so you can respond to them at once. Just to also add on that, I think it's still tied to what that question was, because then there's the disparity between what the policy says, what the constitution says, and then there's what the Children Act says. So the different policies allow any adolescent to go get a service. However, the Children Act says specifically for reproductive health, which from my perspective, that's why I feel like there was malice involved, is where now you need to they need to have parental consent. And then there was now the constitution. So what document should the young people work with when it comes to accessing the different services? And then the second question would be, based on what we are currently seeing with the policy and legal environment, what do you think are the key priorities that we need to focus on as it relates to sexual reproductive health and rights as young people to advance sexual reproductive health for adolescents?
Okay.
Briefly.
Thank you so much. So if I may go with the first question, between law and policy, what is supreme? We understand that the law of the country, which is the constitution, is the supreme law. So every other thing actually derives from that. Yes, I know the constitution caps the age
Gaetano, you're breaking.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now you're back.
Yes, now we can hear you.
Yeah, sorry. Maybe I can start. So I was responding to Innocent's first question around between the constitution and policy, which one is supreme? So we know the constitution is the supreme law of the land, and every other thing actually is derived from the constitution. Yes, the constitution sets the age of majority at 18, but then again, the same constitution actually provides for the right to health for all persons. So when you look at the article around the right to health, it doesn't specify which age. So that actually means as young people, regardless of your age, you have the right to health. So that should be your main argument. That should be your low-hanging fruit when you are having discussions around age of consent, especially when it comes to accessing services as well as information around SRHR. So that I think should actually be very, very important. And this has also been emphasized by some of the documents that organizations like UNFP have also been able to provide, even WHO. So there is that importance, that important aspect of also recognizing the evolving capacities of adolescents to make decisions. Adolescents is a very diverse group. Adolescents and young people are a very diverse group. Whereas you might find an adolescent who is not able to make decisions about themselves. There are those adolescents who can be in a position to make decisions. So why can't they be, given a chance to access services? And it does not only apply to services, but it also applies to the issue around age-met, consensual, and non-exploitative sexual conduct. So we've had instances where if two minors also engage in sexual conduct, and this matter is actually brought before the courts, then we find some of the minors being charged, and yet they consented and they engaged in the act, knowingly. So where do we now start having the discussion? So that's where we start also having that issue around laws and policies recognizing the evolving capacities of adolescents in terms of making decisions about their life. And so in terms of the gaps in our policies and laws, I think, yes, there are gaps, there are misalignments in policies and laws. And you've highlighted very well, Josephine, when you are posing your question around the misalignment when you look at the Children's Act 2022 in the case of Kenya, and when you look at some of the policies that we have. So the policy that expired, the Adolescent Sexual and Reproductive Health Policy 2015 that expired, actually when you look at it, and that's why I was saying it was very progressive. It was allowing for access to services by adolescents. It wasn't capping at what age. And so when you have the Children's Act, which caps and requires third-party consent for adolescents to access services, then that limits adolescents' capacity to not only make informed decisions about themselves, but also just to seek that information. And it does not only affect adolescents. Let's have this clear. It also affects health service providers, in the sense that now, even if that adolescent comes through their doors, they're not able to to offer this service because they feel like they are aiding and abetting a criminality, because the law says you are not supposed to provide these services to this particular group of people. But we understand, and even our statistics tell us very well, the demographic health service that we conduct in our countries, they have very, very good statistics that tell the reality to the government. We find age cohort of adolescents between the ages of 15 and 19, you know, composing as the biggest population that suffer from, you know, unintended pregnancies, STIs, and HIV. When you look at the latest statistics in Kenya, the new infections are, you know, occurring among adolescents and young people. So what does that tell you? Young people are engaging in sex without having comprehensive information on how to engage in safe sex. And this has been occasioned by the law, you know. So as much as we are trying to restrict young people's autonomy and diversity, we as a society, we are facing the consequences. So when we are having many young people getting sick, what implication does that have in our national budgets? It means we need to invest more in healthcare. And you know, from our recent happenings, the healthcare system is also, you know, also has issues. Our doctors have been, you know, on strike for a long time. So you find we are creating problems around problems by having restrictive policies. And so it's high time that we desist from burying our heads in the sand like the proverbial ostrich, by saying, oh, we are Africans, we cannot do this. And we forget, even in our African traditional culture, there are very many elements of comprehensive sexuality education, right? When you go to the Luya land, during circumcision and people talk about the Ramhanam, you know, that kind of thing, it talks about grab that girl and go with her to your Esimba. Esimba in Luya, it means
The lion.
the lion's house. So you see, so there are many elements around CSC and, you know, sexual reproductive health and rights even in our African culture. It's just that we are very choosy and picky when it comes to comprehensiveness of SRHR. So it's high time, again, we have this difficult conversation as much as we are trying to avoid it. And now the main thing around this is now for us to work towards aligning these policies, not only aligning policies at the national level, but aligning these policies to reflect. Remember, I've just presented around legal and policy frameworks at the regional level. So the remaining work for us as advocates, for us as adolescents, is to now, you know, work around advocacy to ensure that we align these frameworks to reflect the commitments that our countries have committed to fulfilling. I think that when we do that, we can go a long way towards ensuring that we are successful in terms of advancing the rights and welfare of adolescents and young people in the region, including sexual and reproductive health and rights. I hope I've answered all the questions, but in the event I've missed one, please let me know and I'll be able to respond. Thank you.
Yes, you've answered all the questions. Thank you so much. That was really insightful. And I think just based on what you've said, it's important to realign policies to avoid the different overlaps that we're having. And because of the overlaps, we as the young people are the ones that are suffering. So thank you so much for highlighting that. And as you've heard, there are other ways. Gaetano would request the different what are they called? The different high level institutions that you mentioned that young people can access if their countries are not working. Could you just type them so that they are able to keep track and able to follow through, just in case somebody just joined a couple of minutes ago? So thank you so much. Feel free to stay in and listen more to young people or leave, depending on how your schedule look like. But we really appreciate the thoughts and the insights that you've shared. There's somebody that loved the song that you were singing.
Sorry, my voice is a bit bad. Yeah, just one more thing about engaging at the regional level is that I will encourage all young people to not be afraid to engage in these levels. Yes, I know at some point we might think they are very high level entities that we cannot penetrate, but it's good if our voices are, as young people, you know, feature in these spaces. And one way of going about it is, first of all, also getting out of our comfort zone as youth-led organizations or youth-serving organizations, and endeavor also to get observer status that will enable us to engage with these treaty monitoring bodies at the regional level as well as at the international level, so that we also advance our voices not only at the local level but also at the national level. And then also endeavor just to partner with NGOs or organizations that are able also to build your capacity around these areas, around engaging at the regional level. I think if we do that, we are going to see very, very positive outcomes from our advocacy and accountability efforts. Thank you, and back to you, Josephine.
Thank you so much, Gaetano. As you've heard, you can apply for observer status to just be part of the different conventions happening at the regional and international level. Thank you so much for finishing on such a high note. In that same breath, I'd like to invite Sir Elvis. I hope you're ready now for your presentation on leadership and governance. Over to you, Elvis, and thank you so much, Gaetano.
Oh, thank you, Josephine. I have an issue with my network, but I think that actually it's good. I'm Elvis from West Africa country and from PP Global in West Africa country. You will excuse me for my English, but I'll be very happy to share with you my thought about governance and leadership situation, like I say, in our region, like Africa. You know that I just want to say thank you, everyone, for giving me the floor. And in our context, where young people represent more than half of African population, you know, it become for us crucial for to take a look at our civic commitments and the way we manifest our commitments. It's clear that young people are already taking the lead in shaping of their future, to taking charge of their body in all aspects of sexual and reproductive health that concern them. And I think that this webinar is proof of that. It shows that young people involved in every aspect of the organization of this conference. I can see that, which is coming up fast. I don't know, in June. Yes, people are taking the lead in their country, villages, workplace, and everywhere they are, with many initiatives such as awareness raising, training activities, comprehensive sexual education, advocacy for compliance with international commitments, empowerment of their peer, like young girls and women, and mobilization are all means that young people are using today to contribute to the real enjoyment of sexual and reproductive health in Africa. And we can have, for example, we have many youth-led organizations in our region, in Africa, West or East Africa. You can have Billy Now, you can have YAM, you can have RHNK young people who are working every day, and they are leading edge and ensuring that everyone have access to the social and reproductive health care that needs. Young militants, as militants or activists and feminists, are taking action today to reposition sexual rights across our continent. This leads they are taking has already proved its value and has already led to a number of advances, such as, you know, the recent amendments law in Benin, which facilitate access to abortion services in Benin. We have that, and we have many other success story in East Africa, and West Africa. I recognize that the leadership of youth-led organization has shown some challenge. For example, the lack of capacity to manage our resources, weak data management, we have the challenge, effective strategy planning, and the quality of our intervention are all elements that we need to work on daily to resolve. I can say the leadership of youth-led organization therefore need to be strengthening and solidify if we want to fight the wave of opposition that are raising up and threatening our gain. We can have, for example, anti-LGBTQ law in Uganda, men blocking access to contraceptive services in Kenya. We can have this example. Can have sexual violence in Benin and so, and the gag rule that has plugged the world into backward sliding in sexual and reproductive rights. Often, these opposition groups are right next to us, but we don't pay attention for that, for them, where we simply need to identify them and involve them in our initiative, in our activities, so that they can be transformed into our ally. I think, and we will need to invest in training and capacity building for civil society organization, governing body, advocates at all levels at the health system in Africa country, and building on, I can say, public and private partnership as cross-cutting strategy to achieve success in our region. It will be difficult for me to dissociate the leadership style in Africa without talking about governance mechanisms that are of unfortunately not accessible to these civil social organizations who are on the ground. I can, the previous speaker spoke about the mechanism in our region, the Protocol of Maputo, Agenda 2063, the ICPD Declaration, and other are often mechanisms produced in conjunction with our states and governments. But at what time, at what moment are civil society organizations involved or called upon? I just want to ask this question. Often it's when they are launched or at the international conference, they invite us to come to speak, or they invite us to be a line of this on this declaration or strategy documents. This become an issue later on the implementation phase because the objectives are not understood. People don't know what they are mean by this objective, and so the stakeholder know nothing about them, and then it is the CSU who become the lifesavers once again. You know, that was my experience as young people, and during the last global dialogue in Benin on ICPD 30, we made an evaluation of ICPD declaration with young people. And the big result we have is that young people don't know and are not aware of objective of this declaration, you know, because they don't associate young people, they don't invite them, they don't explain to them the objective, and young people also don't go to have this information. And I would like to say that effective leadership of civil society organization in Africa require informed governance expressed by a strong political commitment on the part of our government in favor of social and reproductive rights. This will open the door to innovative and flexible ideas adapt to our needs. And I want to say to finish that young people want to be around the table to decide for themselves what is good for them. Young people want African leaders to be accountable for what has been done for them in recent years, and young people want to be partner, not continual target. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elvis, for that beautiful presentation in terms of leadership and governance and what that plays when it comes to meaningful engagement of young people. We really, really appreciate that for your time. Despite the internet issues, you're able to join in and share with us your thoughts and perspectives. So thank you very much. Innocent, do you have any questions in the chat box for Elvis?
Yeah, let me just going through, but before that, I think I'll just want to mention that Elvis has really highlighted quite amazing sentiments here. Just the need for us young people to wake up and say, yes, this is our issues, and we really need to take up leadership and governance when it comes to these issues, not waiting for people to give us these opportunities. I remember some politicians in Kenya, they always say leadership is taken and not given. So I see most of the questions that I saw earlier were from those of most of the participants who are responding to what Gaetano had shared, and most of them were just acknowledging and saying he had shared quite amazing sentiments. And I see somebody from Kenya say, "Hi Dorothy, West Africa Youth Transformation, the Make Project, and in partnership with the Nairobi." Oh, We Africa Youth Transformation, the Make Project in partnership with Nairobi County. So they're implementing both the Understanding Adolescents guidelines and the Parent Caregiver guidelines, which I believe the government is yet to launch them, which is something very amazing. And I think it will have been nice to learn from you. Then I see Judith saying, "Hello, my name is Judith from Zambia. My question is there a mechanism that helps in determining the age-appropriate user-friendly SRTR services for young people?" And I think that would have been for Gaetano, but I think maybe Elvis also can answer if Gaetano will not be in a position to answer. And then I see Dorot says, "In case of defilement or rape, the public are not aware what should be done, and in case victim is being cast to settle the case forced to settle the case out of the court. Can lawmakers intervene when the case goes cold?" This is only thing Gaetano could respond to this. Rose says, "Gaetano, good job, Gaetano. Such insightful conversations around the legal and policy frameworks in different countries. Thank you." Kaimba says, "I love that. Sad the song, Chilamana." That's nice. So for those who didn't understand what Simba meant, Simba is the boy's cage. The boy's cage, the bachelor's cage. Let me say the bachelor's cage. Yes, I see Venom Okumu says, "Good job in the linkage between policies and reality." Venom from TGYE Mombasa. Thank you, Venom, for joining in. I can't see any question right now. I see Maureen says, "Thank you, Elvis. Meaningful engagement is essential and true. We as young people really need to hold our leaders accountable for what happened to us in the previous years." Thank you so much. Maybe if somebody has a question, please, guys, feel free to share the questions through either the question and answer option or just the normal chat box. And as we go on, please also remember to share this on your social media platforms. Remember to share this with your friends and networks, because we are having this engagement live streamed on YouTube. So we want as many young people listening in, as many young people gaining from this wealth of experience that we're having here, all the way from across the different corners of the continent. And I love the engagement that we're having. Thank you so much for those who have joined in. Let's keep sharing our sentiments. Let's keep asking your questions. Thank you so much, Valentito. If you could respond to the question that have been asked, the question about settling issues around defilement and rape out of the court. How do lawmakers come in? How do in Kenya, I hear most of the time you call each other's learned friends. How do you learned friends go about these issues if the client has decided to settle it out of the court and you feel like it won't end well? So maybe Gaetano, you could respond to that. And then the aspect of when Judy asked, is there a mechanism that helps in determining the age appropriate and user-friendly SRHR services? Thank you. Back to you.
Innocent, what was the question, please?
Yes, so somebody asked if if we have any parameters for determining the age appropriateness when it comes to access to SRHR services. And then the other person asked, so the question is there a mechanism that helps in determining age appropriate and user-friendly SRHR services for young people? Then the second person asked, in case of a defilement or rape, the public are not aware what should be done in case of victim being makers intervene or the case goes cold just like that.
Okay. Thank you so much. So for the first one, what I must say is, first, I'm not a lawyer, but based on my understanding is that most of the things that surround defilement cases, you'll find there are many conflicting issues that surround defilement cases, which also inform the outcome of some of these cases. So one of the things that has always come up has always been an issue around the economic capacity of the people or of the people involved. So whereas you find probably the person who has been violated or defiled comes from a low economic kind of background, then other economic factors are at play, where now you find, for example, they decide at times to settle these matters out of court, especially if the perpetrator decides to use the power of the money to settle this particular case. But now, I think the most important thing that we also need to understand, and that also touches with on the public, is that there's need for the public to understand why it is important for them to always stand up against such kind of happenstances, especially when they occur in their societies. There's need for a citizen-led kind of also advocacy, where when such issues take place, it doesn't wait for a family member related to the person who has been violated to take up the matter, but any other citizen from the society can take up the matter, because they understand how important it is to hold people accountable for their actions. And then it's also very, very important to empower our communities economically, so that, at the end of the day, we do not fall prey to some of these issues. And that's why even when you look at programmings that are being done by most organizations and how the designing has been taking place, is that there's that element of economic empowerment. When you look at programming around the SRHR nowadays, there's that bit around economic empowerment for adolescents, so that at the end of the day, they do, those who violate their rights, they do not use the economic power to do the same. So I think when such cases get called, there are usually windows and opportunities to revive those cases, especially if you've got very, very strong evidence that you can put forward. And that's why, again, it is important when guys are doing sensitization around sexual and gender-based violence, then it is also important to sensitize communities on what it means to preserve evidence, so that at the end of the day, when this case goes to court, then there is concrete evidence that can lead to conviction, especially of the perpetrator. And now you find most of the time when these issues occur, probably the girl who has been defiled gets to disclose. That times they don't even disclose, so they die in silence. But in areas where you find they get to disclose, then they're even hashed, or they go ahead and start destroying the evidence. And so when the case actually goes to court, then it so finds out that there is nothing that gets to link the perpetrator to the act. And so it is very, very important also for adolescents and young people to understand in such events, how do you preserve evidence and how do you go against, or rather, how do you move forward towards making a very concrete case that can lead to a conviction. In terms of what determines the age at which adolescents actually get to access services, and I think this one is not cast on stone. When you look at different countries, they've got different ages of consent for adolescents. There are countries whose age of consent is even as low as 16 years, because they understand that aspect of evolving capacities of adolescents. So the adolescents who mature differently compared to other adolescents. There are those adolescents you find even from our what is it called, from our own experience when we were growing up. You'll find that when you are in class, most of the time you'll laugh at that classmate of yours who started having beards early, or you'll start laughing at that friend of yours who probably started having breasts coming out, and rather probably menstruating very early. And so when it comes to the ages of consent, I think the most important thing to understand is, how do you get to evaluate the evolving capacities of adolescents? You cannot categorize adolescents under one umbrella and say these are just adolescents, but within that particular cohort, they evolve differently. The adolescent that lives in the urban areas, they're different from the adolescent who lives in the rural setup, based on also the socioeconomic factors that surround them. So when it comes to matters of age of consent, I think it is very, very important to look at the evolving capacities of adolescents. But then again, also WHO and Dr. Shakira, I wish she was here. She will have highlighted more about this. But also the WHO has been able to provide some guidance around this particular issue. And so it is a conversation that is not supposed only to be had by one discipline. It is a multidisciplinary kind of conversation. So we need also to have health experts, people who are very, very experienced in matters adolescent and development, to also weigh in on some of the intricacies that play behind the scenes when an adolescent is growing up. And then you also need to understand also the perspectives of lawyers. How does the law, to what extent does the law provide for this? So whereas there are some jurisdictions that have pegged the age of consent at a particular age, there are others whose age of consent has been pegged at even 21. So it is a multidisciplinary kind of conversation that only when it has been had can we be able to have, I can say, a parameter. But for now, we cannot say there's a fixed parameter from which you can be able to decide how this one is able to access the service. So it depends also on the circumstances that are prevailing in that particular country, of course, oscillating around social, economic, and cultural perspectives as well. So I think that's what I can share for now. But in the event there are other questions, I'm free to respond. Thank you, Innocent, and back to you.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that, Gaetano. I think that was quite well elaborated. I don't know if there's I've not seen anyone sharing another question in the chat box. I see yeah, I can see there's one that has just popped in. Do we have a SRHR association in Kenya, or members for a SRHR advocacy team where trainings are being done so that individuals can capacity build? Wow, this is a nice question. And I think these are some of the things, this is one of the reasons why we're having this webinar. We would like to hear from you as young people, as at heart, and young people yourselves. What do you want us to do for the young people as we're heading towards the conference? What are we going to say? This is what we discussed as young people during the virtual caravan. This is what we discussed. These are the issues we are facing. And going forward from this conference, because this communique will be shared at the main conference, going forward from this conference, this is what we as the young people feel needs to be done, and this is how we would like it to be done. What we only need, probably, if they can be able to support us, that would be nice. And I love the idea that comes from Stella's question when she asked, do we have association in Kenya or members for a SRHR advocacy team where trainings are being done so that individuals can capacity build? I think that's a simple way of saying we need to have a platform where we are having learning and exchange of ideas, not just having these webinars alone. Thank you so much for that, Stella. Maybe if we have another question, I think I would really like to highlight it if it pops up. And then I see, yes, I see an anonymous attendee says, how does climate change affect SRHR? That is a good question. I don't know if Elvis will be the one to respond to this. I don't know if it will be the one to be responded to by Ambassador Onward or Gaetano? I think either of you can take up the question.
Yeah, let me respond to part of it, and then I'll also allow Elvis to respond to that part of the question. So SRHR the intersectionality between SRHR and climate change has been gaining ground to a very great extent, in the sense that, we are trying to establish how the two are affecting one another, and it's gaining momentum. And just to give an example of how climate change can affect SRHR, I'll give a very good example of the recent happenings in the region, especially countries from East Africa. You've been experiencing flooding most of the time. And if anything, I'll also pick an example from one of the posts that Reproductive Health Network actually posted. If I'm not wrong, it was on LinkedIn, as well as on Instagram. So when there's flooding, and when you look at now, let's say the parts where they are prone to flooding, you find when there's flooding, then most of the time communication is usually cut off. We've seen roads being cut off. We've seen roads being swept away. And so imagine a situation where now the road that leads to a health facility is cut off. What does that mean? It means that those who seek services at those particular health facilities will not be able to access those services. And that actually puts them at a higher risk of their issues or their problem actually getting bigger. A very good example is that, for example, if an adolescent girl wants to attend antenatal clinics, and yet the river has already taken part of the road, that means that, again, complications are bound to occur in the event, let's say, this particular adolescent is not able to consistently follow through her antenatal visits. And so it even, makes it challenging for timely interventions to be made in the event, let's say, there's an emergency that needs to be done. Another example, let's say, for example, we've been talking about the issue of unsafe abortions, especially in the region where in Kenya, we've been having abortions taking place as many as, 500, almost 450,000 abortions taking place. And so you find a situation where an adolescent girl or a young woman has, because of now constrictions in law where they're not able to access safe and legal abortion, they resort to uncouth means. They resort to backstreet doctors to do unsafe abortion, which actually threatens their life. And so you find when a complication has also occurred, there cannot be any timely intervention that can be made to save the life of this particular girl. I was working in Mombasa at some point, and in some particular area, you'll find whenever it will rain, then the health facilities will be flooded, especially there's a place called Ziwa la Ng'ombe. So the health facility will be flooded, and then that means that the health facility gets to be closed. And what gets to happen when the health facility is closed? It means services cannot be offered. So those wanting to test for HIV cannot get those services. Even if you are to have PEP administered, then you'll run out of time. Those who want to access family planning methods, let's say, for example, somebody was not able to, there are no pharmacies. There are areas that even a simple pharmacy is not, or a chemist, like what we are used to calling, in our local terms, is not even anywhere nearby. And so they depend on the local health facility dispensary to get medicine. So it means if they are flooded, then even access to services becomes impaired. And that's how climate change actually affects SRHR. When you look at the aspect of menstrual hygiene and management, there's also that intersectionality. And so you find even guys doing interventions around reusable pads. So imagine you are in a community where you've already trained girls on, making and using reusable pads, and you find once you've used these pads, you're supposed to to hang them out to dry. So imagine in a situation where the weather is constantly wet and there's no opportunity for these reusable pads to dry, what happens then? It means then the girls are prone to infections that are bound to rise from that particular environment. So that's how I think I can connect SRHR with climate change. But I'll pause there and allow Sir Elvis Seriki also to just weigh more on the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Gaetano. I think Gaetano has said almost everything, but I just want to add that I believe that it's we are I won't say on contrary that it is who we are contributing to climate degradation if we don't manage our sanitary wastes properly. As Gaetano was saying, the condom that we are using, and that's we throw away the nature. How are we manage our condom if we are finished to use them? How our clinic manage the sanitary waste? Are they just put it, I don't know, everywhere, or what are the public system we have to manage properly this sanitary waste? I think that this contributes serious on our climate. Climate change is having a serious impact on the process of new births. Actually, the reaction today that today women may develop during their pregnancy are not necessarily the ones they should have. We have one study in Benin who did demonstrate that women develop many reaction during their pregnancy during the pregnancy period. They develop many reactions caused by climate change, because we have, in West Africa, we have like 2 sections. And by this season, women should not have problem during the pregnancy process. But today, we remark that they have many problems during this process. And if we go to our girls and women during the period of hygienic menstrual management, how are they use their waste? If they finish to use the materials, where are they put it? All of these contribute to impact our climate today, and we should pay attention for that and work in multi-sectorial dynamic. How can we put climate change in our action? Even if we are in SRHR topic, how do we call people who are working in climate change to come with us and have a reflection of that? And we should take account intersectionality challenge today and have a link and solve this problem we have today. That's why actually in Millennial now, maybe young people are working together. If you are in climate change organization and SRHR organization, we can work together to develop a flexible solution to address the challenge we have today. That's all I can say actually on that. Thank you. Josephine?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Elvis. That was amazing. Thank you so much for the sentiments, and thank you so much again, Gaetano. That was really amazing. Just listening to what you guys are sharing about the aspects of the consent, the aspects of also the rape cases, and I know these are some of the issues affecting us as young people. These are the issues affecting our sisters and brothers, our aunts out there, and it's actually very good to talk about them. Then going back to the inbox, I can see Musa says even facilities are flooded in the eventuality that you wanted family planning method. this contributes to unmet need? Good question. And it comes up with the question, yes, we are having this as one of the challenges. So what in your, how in your own opinion would you want us to advance, to accelerate access to these family planning services? Do you feel there's a way we can do that? And then Venom also says, we actually work in Ziwa Langombe, and Bamburi climate change has a direct effect on SRHR. Thank you so much for that. That I think it's a real testimony. And then Lauren, I like how he responded to the question with relevant examples. Thank you so much, Lauren, for acknowledging that. Yes, I see Dorot says, how can resources be allocated to strengthen the county capacity to generate research evidence for decision making, and also ensure education at least up to the secondary level? It's a good question there. Maybe Gaetano, are you in a position to respond to that?
Can I go on?
Yes, please, Cyrus, you can go on.
Okay.
I think that we should be present where people are taking decisions. You know, where when people are decide about what do we want to do this year or this 5-year work coming, we should be there to give also our thought about what are our priority. You know, in Africa today, we don't have data, we don't have resource, we don't make resource evidence, we don't make this type of activity. And then I think that it is a priority for us to talk about and to say to our decision maker that we should produce many data on what we are doing to be able to give how can I say it, a good decision, a good orientation for our work. Without data, without evidence, we cannot have a good activity. We cannot have a good impact on our beneficiary. That's all I can say, actually. Thank you.
Amazing. All over to you, Gaetano.
Ian, this is in relation to how we can integrate, is it CSC? Right? The one
the question,
on education.
Yeah, we had a question on the curriculum, and then somebody is now asking a question here: how can resources be allocated to strengthen the county capacity to generate research evidence for decision making, and also ensure education to at least up to the secondary level?
Oh, okay. I think when it comes to resource mobilization, it's a joint effort. In this particular sense, all of us are working in different sectors, and that's why, again, in my submission, I've been emphasizing on the issue of intersectionality, how different issues intersect. And so I think for us, it is important to first of all understand where should these resources come from, you know, because those who have been involved in budget advocacy, you'll come to understand there are different sources of revenue that the government actually, you know, plans with and, you know, goes ahead and allocates to the different ministries as far as their work is concerned. So we need to start asking ourselves, like, is that enough? And then again, the other thing that should also go towards this is for us to see how we can encourage, through law and policy, other entities to also contribute to the education sector. And I'm bringing this up because I know at some point when it comes to working with the education sector, there are some stringent rules, especially if other entities are coming to support some elements of education. So it's important, if you are to have enough resources, then also the education ministry needs to be at liberty to work with partners, especially who work around education. And it's also important for the education experts to start seeing how education in itself intersects with other issues, so that once they understand how education intersects with SRHR, then through partnership and collaboration with SRHR, pro SRHR organizations
Gaetano?
Once we do that, we'll be able to have enough resources that can be able to, support our education systems the way the question has been put, and also just to continue strengthening the capacities of the education stakeholders, because at times we are education, or because somebody holds a particular title, then they understand everything that has got to do with that particular office. And so it calls on us also to endeavor to build the capacities of these individuals to understand what their mandate is all about. And as the center, we are doing this work under a project called She Saw Us. So She Saw Us actually speaks about, or rather means sexual and reproductive health and rights supporting economic empowerment of adolescent girls' rights and skills. So it endeavors to, engage in what we call accountability engagement. So holding accountable duty bearers for doing what they've been employed to do. So under this particular engagement is that when you are engaging, let's say, for example, the Department of Education, it's important, first of all, for the people in the Department of Education to understand their mandate and how they can carry out their mandate effectively and successfully. Because most of the time, people are given appointments. Some of them, as we all understand, they are political appointments. Some people come into these offices without even having the requisite skills and experience to understand how to deliver on their mandate. And so it calls upon us also to understand the people we are engaging with, are they capacity strengthened enough for them to be able to implement their mandate or to carry out their mandate to the best standards possible. So it is a continuous process, and we cannot say that it is an event. So it also calls upon us to continue to catalyze and strengthen those partnerships that will be very critical towards ensuring that we have enough resources to advance or to escalate any intervention that we have. Thank you, and over to you, Ian.
Amazing. Thank you so much for the amazing sentiments, Gaetano. That I think that sums up this second part of our engagements. I know people have so many questions, but I would really love to let us just jump into the second last session, because we are out of time. So maybe just to mention one, I see Prudence says, I'm delighted for the impactful session we've had. Thank you to RHNK team. Thank you so much for this. It's the high time to engage our youth and offer civic education in order to achieve an empowered society. Speaking about empowerment, allow me guys to take you through some of the videos that some of the voices we were able to collect from young people across the region who are sharing their ideas, their thoughts, how they felt we need to work when it comes to accelerating strategies towards realizing quality health indicators among our adolescents and young people. So I'll be sharing, I'm going to be sharing a video here. I'm going to be sharing a video here, and from this video, we shall be having just a minute. I'm going to be sharing a video here. Let me know if it will be playing from your side.
Is to effectively like there to have probably.
Let me see this.
Zimbabwe. The main problem that we're facing in Zimbabwe when it comes to care reproductive health rights is no misconception. Thank you.
Apologies for the inconvenience. Let's allow us to try and share from another device. Hi guys. Apologies for I think we are having an issue with the sharing the video. We're able to share, but the audio is not able to come out. So we shall upload this on our website and also on YouTube, and then share the link to you guys. I know you all registered, so the link will be shared to your emails. And I know that those of us who asked if we can have the recordings shared with you. So we shall have all this shared with you guys in due time. Thank you so much, everyone. And I don't know if we have anyone with a question, but I see most people are now dropping off because our time is up. Thank you so much, everyone. I see people are now checking out. Thank you, Dorothy. Thank you, Haemba. Wherever you are, please remember to mention to your colleagues, to your friends about our upcoming conference, and we shall be sharing whatever you guys have shared. I've been picking notes from the messages you've been sharing, your concerns. Just to highlight a few of the messages, we have those who inquired if we can have a learning platform, a common learning platform. And I think that is one of the things we are going to look into, just to see to it that we have a platform where our young people are able to learn from each other, are able to support each other, and they're able to just improve themselves, not only socially, but also economically. I think that would be very nice. So we shall be looking into that, and probably by the time we get to the main conference, we shall have developed a good idea that we shall present and say, this is what the young people said. And don't be afraid of sharing your ideas. You can still share your ideas through the mail. Just let us know how you want us to implement young people's needs, how you want us to implement young people's demands, how you want us to share this, and just to ensure that our policymakers, our donors, and all stakeholders in the adolescent and youth sexual reproductive health realm listen and act upon the young people's calls to action. Thank you so much, everyone. I don't have much to say right now, just to say goodbye and have a blessed evening, have a blessed day, have a blessed morning from wherever you're joining us from. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye.